So we're going to start with blockchain because of that reason and see how the way will lead us from there to the joint venture.
Exactly.
And when we talk about blockchain, then I must say we live times or in super exciting times because we've got the tools and in many regards the consciousness to solve some of the biggest problems that are out there. And I just want to show you 3 examples. In Germany, for example, there is an AI company that is using artificial intelligence in order to make railroads more reliable, and as a result of that, help us to shift to more low-carbon modes of transport. In India is a company that is using technology in order to help women to discover breast abnormalities without touch, pain, and at super low costs. They've got FDA approval. They're operating right now in 30 cities. So fantastic work. And in Kenya, the Philippines, and Mexico, there's another company that is using technology in order to make financial services accessible to those that do not have a bank account. So these are just 3 examples from across the world of how technology is actually helping us to grow as humans, as societies, and more importantly, as economies. So one could say we are off into a rosy future. Everything should be good. And while this is certainly a possibility, reality looks a bit different today. The digital economy and the economy at large is shaped by 2 forces, which is big tech and digital authoritarianism. That not only stifles innovation, because it stifles competition, but more importantly, we are in the phase, or we are at a time where people are losing trust, and this is a problem. 71 respondents in 9 countries across the entire world are saying they're not trusting the digital economy, and 81 Americans are saying even that what we're getting from the digital economy outweighs the benefits. And this is before deepfakes came around, where we are not knowing anymore what is real and what is fake. And this is a problem, because if we're not trusting one another, we are not interacting with one another. And if we're not interacting with one another as much as we could, we are not growing as much as we could, again, as human societies and economies. So we have to solve the trust problem. And it was in the face of another crisis of trust, 2008, just after the financial crisis, when Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper on Bitcoin. And on the first page, exactly addressing the problem of trust, by proposing that instead of trusting in human-led institutions, that we are trusting in code. The first use case for that are payment. It did not really see the mainstream adoption that we would have wished, and yet there's huge potential. If you go to each street down there and you pay with your credit card, your transaction goes through so many different actors, and everyone is not only taking a small fee, but it's just fragile, and I think we can all agree to that. And it's also highly inefficient. Now, if you have $100 for example, and you transact that 22 times, it is cut in half just by the fees. If you use PayPal, it's only 11 times. So there's something that we have to do about it. Bitcoin is there to offer a solution, but we also do know there's still quite a way to go until this is actually seeing the adoption that it deserves. Bitcoin was only the start. Use case was only payments. 2014, 2015 then, when Ethereum came around, we saw a whole new range of use cases where people were thinking, okay, if we can decentralize payments already, can we also decentralize other parts of financial interactions? And DeFi was born, where we saw not only payments being decentralized, but asset management, scoring, lending, and other services as well. And this is just the start, because people then went and said, okay, if we can decentralize financial services, if we can decentralize the ownership and the governance of these services, what else can we do? And the bigger picture that is emerging there is Web3. In order to understand what Web3 is, we quickly have to go a step back and see what Web1 was. Web1 started in the 1990s when the internet came around. It was email and we could read newspapers. It was very static, right? We could only get information out of it. Then, quickly after, we had platforms coming up where we all of a sudden could collaborate, Facebook, Google, and Co. But for the collaboration, we had to give up ownership of our creations. We had to give it to YouTube. We had to give it to TikTok, to Instagram. They are owning it. Now, what Web3 is promising is that we can have all of this but actually owning the content and better commercializing it in the process. Now, the moment you actually decentralize something, you're wondering, okay, how do you govern all of this? Because at some point you have to find a way where if you do not have management boards anymore, if you do not have human organizations and enterprises anymore, you need to have a different way to decide what new features to build or, for example, how to maintain whatever you have created. And the solution for that are so-called decentralized autonomous organizations. And they are what some people hope to be what the ink was in the 21st century, that this is now in the 20th century, that the DAO is in the 21st century. It means it is an internet native organization that is purely run on code, again, trusting in code instead of human-led institutions. And because of that, it's super grassroots, it's super democratic, it's super accessible across the world, there are no national borders. And there are a couple of examples. DAOs are being used already for managing public goods or for research collaborations. And while, again, we haven't seen mass adoption, it's still significant that by now there are over 2,000 DAOs out there that are managing over 31 billion US dollars in treasury. So we can see that a new paradigm is emerging where assets of any sort are decentralized and owned by the masses rather than by individuals, and that the governance of this is actually happening grassroots and bottom up. Now, one example that I find particularly interesting, especially when we talk about Yoko, is the city DAO. And for that, I just play a quick video so that you see what it's all about.
To build a city using the Ethereum blockchain.
We're imagining this kind of future where, you see this beautiful parcel map of all the different pieces of land. In one click, basically you just buy this NFT and you now have the right to use that land.
This group of investors is called CityDAO, and it has no official leader. Rather, it's owned and governed by its members.
We are collectively governing this land, so we're deciding what happens to the land, if we're going to build things, if we're going to allow people to camp on the land.
This type of organization is known as a DAO. There are about 200 tracked by the data service DeepTech, and they all have different goals, like collectively owning an NBA team, a rare copy of the US Constitution, or a future blockchain-based city.
So we can see that by now, this decentralized approach is really leaving the virtual world behind and moving into the physical world, even building cities in Wyoming. And that's an important one because Wyoming has actually recognized DAOs as a legal entity, hence they can sign contracts, something that we haven't seen elsewhere in the world so far, or just in very few places. And this is relevant. However, the bigger picture that we see appearing is a picture where everything is fractionalized and accessible at fractionalized units. And that is the picture of fractionalization. And you can fractionalize by now real estate, you can fractionalize land, you can fractionalize art and collectibles and commodities, and it's fungible at the same time, which means the idea behind this is that you can trade directly your real estate, for example, against art. You do not have to go via fiat currencies anymore. So this is the big promise. Again, we're just at the beginning, and whether or not we see this sees the light of day, we'll have to see. But the promise is there, and there's sufficient activity to take it serious. Now I want to dive, and here's where we're coming slowly to Yoko Connect and to the joint venture. I want to dive quickly into how that could look in the real estate sector. For that, we need to understand how real estate investments are happening today. So you have a house, and either you invest in a house through a real estate trust fund, which is not so good in my eyes because you have to pay taxes, it's super expensive in many regards, you cannot use the houses, and you have zero influence on the investment strategy. So, in my eyes, not a very good deal. Or you're an individual and you go somewhere and you buy the house. But if the house is expensive, which is in many cases, which is often the case, then you tie up a lot of equity, you have a cluster risk because oftentimes you are overly centralizing your portfolio, and you can oftentimes not use it, or if you're renting it out, or if you're living there yourself, then it doesn't make any profit. So it's good for some people, but certainly it is not ideal for all. So how does this decentralized infrastructure now solve the problem? In a decentralized way, you've got the house. The house is sold to a DAO. The DAO, and this only works in the United States because it is recognized and can sign contracts according to Wyoming law. The DAO that issues token to a number of token holders Then the token holders manage the DAO and hence the house. For example, decide on property managers, and the property managers are then managing the house. And this is already possible today. It's fantastic. There's a company in the United States called Lofty that is doing that. You can own a house with $50. And there's certain liquidity even. You can move things around. And yet, there are a number of risks involved with that because there's still regulatory uncertainty because Wyoming is one state, there are many other states, there's tax uncertainty, and there is generally not necessarily the infrastructure, and that's why we cannot have it here in Costa Rica just yet, because Costa Rica does not recognize DAOs as the institution that can sign contracts. So because we cannot do this, doesn't mean that we cannot apply the concept. And fractional ownership still matters and still holds a lot of value. And therefore, we have created a fractional ownership here in the Yoko village. So instead of owning a token in a DAO, you own a share in a company, and the company owns the house. Depending on how many shares you're holding, you can use the house more often than you can use the house more often. You can make money with the property because every time the house is not rented out, you can actually rent it, not used by the owners, you can rent it out to others and hence make money. And the management is provided by other people. So here I had some issues last time because many people are usually saying, okay, that sounds very much like a timeshare. And timeshares, if you look it up, are really a bad deal. And that's why it is important to draw the distinction between a timeshare and a fractionalized ownership. In a timeshare, you buy the right to use a property. You do not own it. You have no equity, so when the property actually makes profit, you are not benefiting from that. And you have oftentimes a lot of owners, up to 50. In fractional ownership, because you own a part in the company, you own a part of the underlying, and as such, you are actually owning the house. That makes sounds dangerous. And because you're owning it, you can also participate in the profit sharing. So there are important distinctions between the two models. There are, since COVID, a number of marketplaces for fractional ownership in the United States, but again, we do not have it here in Costa Rica, and that's why we have kind of taken the business model and made a very small version out of this here for Yoko Connect. And the first house that we've put into a joint venture is Villa number 1 that you all see today. A beautiful piece of architecture, fantastic house. We initially had the idea to build a new house. So when I was talking here last year, the idea was still that we would go to lot number 4 and that we would construct a house from scratch. It would have been a horizontal. But because villa number 1 was then finished in the process, the opportunity opened up that instead of building a house, we take the turnkey house that is ready and put that into the joint venture and have it. And that is the reason why you can visit it today and why some of the co-owners are already living in it. So the reason for that was that a number of people came to learn and here to the Yoko Connect community and said, we really want to actually live here, we want to be investors, but we do not have 1.5 million or 1.1 million. So we said, okay, let's pool them into exactly this joint venture, and that was the idea of why we were doing it. And it works that everyone owns a share in the company, and again, as shareholder, you have rights to use it. The idea is that we are renting out the villa when during all the days it is not used, and that we are selling it after a certain price is reached in order to secure a certain return on invest. And it is for all that are here and that would like to have a place to stay in their own house when they are coming to Yoko Connect or beyond. So quickly on the financial returns. We've calculated all the land costs, the construction costs, the company incorporation. It comes up to 1.1 million. That's the value of the entire joint venture because that's the value of the house with the land and the titles that is the underlying. And once you assume that we are having it at least 3 years, then you get to a return of invest of 40%. Some quick overview legal work in case some of you are interested. It's pretty simple. We have a partnership agreement amongst the co-investors, which we have amended once since we moved from construction to owning a house. It kind of clarifies that we can use the house. It clarifies the purpose of the villa, so renting out, self-use, and selling. It appoints Yoko as a managing member. I'm the secretary or the speaker or representative of the investors. And it also clarifies when shareholders make decisions and what kind of majority rights are applicable. Then we have the company founding documents, and all of that was, by the way, possible because of Adrian. So thanks a lot again. And if you have any questions, please, speak with him.
Tomorrow.
Exactly. There's a self-use clause, and there was a bit of a matter of discussions last time, and it looks like following. If you, and this is a new thing, right? And we've said, if you do now a minimum investment of 100,000, it's 20 days per year, and however, if you are not going for 100,000, we would go down as to 50,000 again, something that we've done exactly in the past. And the idea is not that it's always entirely for free, and that's the reason behind it. The idea is that you do not pay anything in low season, 50% off discount Airbnb in the medium season, and 25 in the high season. And the idea is that it is fair for everyone. The idea is that if you cannot make it in 1 year to fully use your days, that you still at least make some money because the others are not blocking the villa entirely. Right, and Yoko is the management company for that. One note for those that are from the US, the vehicle is eligible for self-directed retirement account funds, which is actually pretty cool because you do not pay taxes on that. You only pay taxes when you pay yourself out the retirement funds. So you can kind of invest your retirement funds into this house. Once you sell it, you invest it in something else, and in the process you don't invest taxes, which makes it actually pretty interesting. So it is a sweet deal. However, you also have to consider the downsides. So a self-directed retirement fund account is not a 401k. It is something that only entrepreneurs usually are having. And last but not least, if you actually use your retirement funds for this, you cannot have it for self-use. That's at least by the law. There are always solutions to problems, but you should be aware about that. And with this, I would like to welcome all of you to join the JV. There's still some seats left. We've got 8 co-investors for now. And as it happened, we also already started talking today about a second joint venture to take over villa number 11 and Yoko North, which seems to be a pretty sweet deal. So if any one of you is interested to join one of the 2 ventures, please come to me or any of the co-investors or learn, and I'm pretty sure we can make it work. With that, I would like to come to an end and give a big shout out to Eden actually and Senara, who made this house so beautiful, and actually the entire Yoko team, and who are managing it now absolutely flawlessly. So thank you so much.